Okay, we're going to get started. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first public meeting for the Newton Corner Long-Term Planning Study. This is a long-term planning study with an outlook beyond MassDOT's ongoing highway division work, which is implementing immediate and near-term improvements. My name is Patrick Snyder, and I'm the project manager for this long-term planning study. Before we get started, we like to review Zoom procedures so that we're all on the same page. We will have the opportunity for discussion with questions and comments later in the presentation. If you'd like to share comments or questions during the presentation, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen by clicking on the button that says Q&A. You can use the buttons on the bottom left to edit your audio options. Later, when we get to the Q&A portion of the meeting, you'll be able to raise your hand and we can unmute you. General attendees are automatically camera off on entering the meeting, but like I said, you'll have the opportunity to speak later if you'd like to. At that time, you can click the raise hand button also on the bottom of your screen, or click Alt-Y if you're on the computer. If you're on the phone with us tonight, you can dial *9, which will raise your virtual hand, and we'll see it on the screen. If you have trouble with the internet or technical problems during tonight's meeting, you can call in on the phone at 1-309-205-3325 and enter the webinar ID 895-2544-2454, and then the passcode 287240. If you're watching this meeting on a computer, you can use the view button at the top right to adjust your view settings. Closed captioning is available tonight. It's automatically generated by Zoom, and you can activate it by clicking another button on the bottom of your screen. Just know that it's not always accurate since it's automatically generated. If you have trouble with the meeting technology tonight, you can call in at 1-888-799-9666. We would also like to review notes and procedures for MassDOT public meetings. This meeting will be recorded, and MassDOT may retain and distribute the video, images, audio, and chat transcript from the Zoom meeting. We do plan on posting tonight's recording on the study website along with the PowerPoint. This meeting is considered as part of the public record, so by continuing attendance at tonight's meeting, you are consenting to being part of the record. If you're not comfortable being recorded, you can stay muted during this meeting or excuse yourself. You have entered this meeting camera off and muted, and like I said, we'll have time at the end of our presentation if you'd like to ask questions or make comments verbally. You're also welcome to use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We do welcome all questions and comments during tonight's meeting, but we ask that you keep them respectful. Our agenda for tonight's meeting is to review the purpose of this long-term planning study, goals and objectives, and existing conditions. We've had our welcoming and opening procedures and are going to proceed with the study overview, which includes our study area, study process, public involvement plan, and previous efforts and themes that we reviewed. We'll then go over our study goals and objectives and existing conditions with planning context and multimodal mobility conditions, excuse me. We will continue with our schedule and next steps, and then we'll close with a public comment period when you're all welcome to share questions and comments. A brief moment to introduce those of us working on this study. My name is Patrick Snyder. I work in MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning, and I'm the project manager for this study. I'm joined by my colleague, Rachel Kelly. Assisting on this effort is our consultant team, Christine Triarchis, Nikki Hastings, Matt Duranlo, and Christine Yee. We'd like to provide an overview of the purpose of this long-term planning study. This is a long-term planning study for the Newton Corner interchange and its local roads in Newton. MassDOT Highway Division has been working on short and medium-term improvements, which are ongoing. This long-term planning effort will develop more significant multimodal transportation solutions and safety improvements for the Newton Corner I-90 exit 127 interchange and the intersecting roads. The study area includes Newton Corner, West Newton, and DCR roadways in Newton, Brighton, and Watertown, along with the surrounding neighborhoods. This study will develop and analyze alternatives, present recommendations, and develop an approach for potential future implementation. We kicked off the study in 2024 with our first working group meeting, which was in May, and we aim to complete it in 2025, next year. I'd like to turn it over to Christine Triarchis to review the background of the study and previous themes.
Thank you, Patrick. Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Triarchis, the consultant project manager for this study. As many of you know, or may have even been involved with, there have been previous and ongoing planning efforts in Newton Corner and its surrounding areas, including 2 studies conducted by CTPS, more formally known as the Boston Metropolitan Planning Organization Central Transportation Planning Staff. Sorry, that's a mouthful. As well as road safety audits in the DCR roadway area and Newton Corner. MassDOT and VHB have been working on a midterm improvement study that's been ongoing for the past couple of years. That midterm study is now coming to a close. The last public meeting was held this summer to present recommendations, and the report will be issued this fall. As a result of this midterm planning study process, MassDOT District 6 is currently implementing some immediate short-term safety improvements to be completed this fall. As part of the midterm planning study, public feedback was gathered through a series of polls and breakout sessions during those public meetings. I'd like to give a quick snapshot of overarching themes we heard through that process, as we will be building upon this feedback as part of our long-term study work. We heard that the biggest transportation concern is related to safety, followed by vehicle traffic and congestion, as you can see on the chart on the left of your screen. These views were discussed in more detail during some breakout sessions, where many participants shared comments generally indicating that for all modes, the study area is not functioning well, presents safety hazards to all who travel through, and that many just simply avoid traveling through the area whenever possible. Other general comments were that the area's stressful and confusing patterns result in cut-through traffic to local quiet neighborhood streets, and that maintenance issues such as ponding and snow removal impacted safety for all users. Now, focusing on this long-term planning effort, we've established a local study area that consists of the 3 ovals that you see on your screen: West Newton, Newton Corner, and the area we're calling DCR roadway area. These areas are the focus of the multimodal analysis at an intersection level. We've also developed this slightly larger half-mile buffer around I-90 that is the focus of the environmental, public health, and land use components of the study. Additionally, we have a regional study area that's being utilized for some other components, including regional, public, and private transit. The regional study area is generally bound by Route 128 to the west, Route 9 to the south, the Alston-Brighton interchange to the east, and Route 20 to the north. Our study process kicked off with establishing goals and objectives and evaluation criteria. We also established our working group and developed a public involvement plan. We have completed our existing conditions analysis, which establishes the baseline for this study, and we are now starting to plan for future conditions, looking towards the year 2050. Then we get to be creative and develop up to 6 long-term alternatives for a detailed analysis. This is intended to be a workshop-style development process, starting with an initial brainstorming, working with our study team and stakeholders to solicit ideas and creative solutions. And after our first level screening of these initial ideas, we will then reduce the number of alternatives to a limited set of 6 discrete alternatives. We'll then analyze and document mobility, safety, environmental, public health, land use, economic development, and community effects for these long-term alternatives against the evaluation criteria. The final recommendations will be based on the results of this alternatives analysis. And it goes without saying, but continuous stakeholder engagement and feedback throughout the process is critical to the success of this study. I will now hand it back over to Patrick to discuss the public involvement plan.
Thank you, Christine. So public involvement is an important part of our planning process. We welcome you all to give input throughout the course of this study. This public involvement plan for the planning study is laid out in detail on our study website at mass.gov/Newton Corner Long-Term Planning Study with hyphens between those words after the slash. We'd like to highlight that we'll hold 6 working group meetings over the course of the study. We've already held 2. The working group is comprised of elected officials, municipal staff, advocacy groups, and other individuals who have subject matter expertise, who provide us with feedback relevant to the lived experiences of those in the study area. These meetings are open to the public. We'll also hold 4 public information meetings. This is the first one, where you'll be welcome to give feedback and listen to what we've been up to. You are also welcome to use our online engagement tools. We have a virtual meeting room, which is linked on the study website, and where you can submit site-specific comments using a mapping tool. You can also reach out using our contact information that is posted on the study website. And speaking of our virtual meeting room, I do want to emphasize the importance of collecting your feedback about living near and traveling through Newton Corner. Your input helps inform the planning process. By understanding your experiences, we can tailor our analysis and solutions during the study more effectively to meet community needs. The QR code on this slide and the provided link below give you direct access to the study's virtual meeting room, which includes a survey where you can submit your insights and suggestions, as well as other comments. There's also a mapping exercise where you can submit site-specific comments if you have a concern about a particular area. This website will remain active throughout the study, and we're going to leave it up just for another moment in case you want to scan the QR code or write down that website link there. This PowerPoint will also be online and you can click on it. Link is also on the study website. You're welcome to share feedback here at any point or by using the contact information on the study website itself. So we'll now take a moment to review the study goals and objectives, which help us consider key themes and potential improvements. As we review these, you're welcome to provide comments in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll also have an opportunity later for feedback as well. Our overarching study goals are as follows on this slide. Improve access, safety, and mobility for all. Reconnect Newton's neighborhoods, enhance quality of life, promote sustainable transportation solutions, and develop actionable recommendations. I'll pass it over to Christine to review the objectives for each goal on the following slides. Christine, you are on mute.
I am so
Virtual
sorry. I thought
environment.
I unmuted myself before I started. I apologize, everyone. Thank you, Patrick. Our first goal is to improve access, safety, and mobility for all. Our objectives are focused on enhancing the safety and efficiency for all road users, and especially vulnerable road users. We want to broaden access to various transit options and improve the priority and reliability of public transit services. Our aim is to reduce travel delays for all users while safeguarding crucial east-west regional roadway and transit connections. Additionally, we are dedicated to addressing and closing social and economic transportation equity gaps to provide fair access to everyone. The second goal is to reconnect Newton's neighborhoods. We want to bring these neighborhoods that are divided by the Newton Corner interchange back together. Our goal is to make travel safer, more convenient, and more comfortable for everyone. We want to make the most of the facilities we already have and create better regional connections for all types of travelers, especially north-south connections over I-90 and the commuter rail, all while trying to foster a welcoming and equitable environment for everyone. Our next goal is to enhance the quality of life. We aim to promote the equitable distribution of benefits and resources. Our focus includes minimizing adverse impacts on public health and the environment. We want to minimize externalities of the I-90 transportation demands. Additionally, we seek to enhance economic opportunities and support strategic land use and open space plans. Our next goal is to promote sustainable transportation solutions. We're seeking to develop strategies and solutions focused on mitigating climate change, including identifying and adapting to the risks associated with climate change impacts. Facilitating the transition to low and zero emission transportation modes is a key priority, and our project must align with and support local climate mitigation initiatives as well. Our final goal is to develop actionable recommendations. We want to create solutions that garner support from all of you in the public, as well as our host communities. It's essential to identify projects that are both cost effective and have a strong focus on return on investment. And finally, we want to develop projects that align with potential funding sources as well. Now, building off of the study goals and objectives, the study team has developed evaluation criteria. The evaluation criteria are the standards for measuring and assessing alternatives against our goals and objectives. A draft of these evaluation criteria is available on the study website. In August, working group members were invited to provide feedback on these evaluation criteria, and we will be finalizing these shortly. As we look towards shaping the future of Newton Corner, we value your input and insights. We have a quick poll question to get your thoughts on what lies ahead. So the question is, if you could envision the future of Newton Corner in one word, what word would you use to describe it? Please take a moment to think about it and submit your response. Your feedback is important to us, and we will consider these responses as we work towards a collective future vision.
We do have some answers coming in, Christine. I'm going to leave this open for another moment. Thank you all for answering the poll. It's not required, but you're welcome to submit some feedback if you like. And I'm going to give it about 10 to 15 more seconds for any final feedback here in the interest of time. If you want to tell us anything else, you're welcome to speak later during the Q&A or put some information in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. We do have a bunch of answers here. Walkable, welcoming, safer, Z-Transit, connected, safety is coming up. We'll post these results online with a summary of our meeting notes. Thank you. And now I'm going to pass it over to Matt from VHB to summarize our existing conditions analysis.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it. My name is Matt Duranlo, and I'm the Mobility Task Lead from VHB on this study. Tonight, I'm going to present a summary of the existing conditions. Just want to let you know we've done a fair amount of analysis of existing conditions. So tonight, I'm just going to give a highlight and overview, a high-level overview. Try not to go too deep into the weeds and bore everyone since I know we have limited time tonight. But before I start, as we all know, there have been a lot of previous planning efforts in the past focused on this area. The main focus of these previous studies was on Newton Corner with an emphasis on vehicles and intersection analysis. Our current study will broaden the scope, looking into a variety of transportation impacts in Newton Corner and in the surrounding areas. This study will look at not just transportation, but also factors such as land use, public health, the environment, demographics, and more. The goal is to produce a wider range of solutions going beyond what past efforts have covered. Tonight, I'm going to provide a high-level overview of the key takeaways from our existing conditions analysis. We understand, though, that data is only one point of the story, and it's limited in what it can capture. That's why we also will want to hear from you tonight and through the online survey to understand people's actual lived experience, and we will layer that onto the data and the analysis when we start thinking about alternatives. Prior to starting the existing conditions analysis, we reviewed previous Newton Corner efforts, as Christine talked about earlier, including those studies by CTPS done in 2006 and 2009, the road safety audit that was conducted in 2020, and statewide planning documents, including the congestion in the Commonwealth, the MBTA bus network redesign, and the MassDOT Beyond Mobility reports. There are several takeaways from these studies, such as recommendations to improve the area by reconfiguring roadways and adding new vehicle, transit, pedestrian, and bicycle facilities. Also, improving roadway safety and reducing collisions need to be a critical component and key objective of all local and statewide infrastructure projects. Getting into our existing conditions analysis, we first reviewed the current mode share and vehicle ownership within the study area. While people travel through the area for all purposes, we typically look at commuter data provided by the U.S. Census Bureau to give us insight on existing mode share and travel patterns. What we found is that about half of all Newton residents drive alone for their commute, while less than 10% take public transit. We also found that about 6% of the Newton population are zero-vehicle households. The current design of Newton Corner is oriented towards driving and does not optimally serve other alternative modes. Moving on to pedestrians, our study team conducted a review of the existing pedestrian accommodations within the study area, which included a review of accessibility. We found that pedestrian accommodations in Newton Corner and in the surrounding area are quite limited and often not very comfortable. There are many locations that don't meet ADA compliance standards, with 2 of those examples shown here on the right, and walking along major roads can be stressful due to heavy traffic. Newton Corner is a key area for pedestrian travel with high demand as it is a village center with many commercial businesses and bus stops, and it is close to the Charles River pathways. Current north-south connections require an indirect route that could be made more safe, efficient, and low stress. Looking at bicycle accommodations, the current facilities are limited and often disconnected. The Charles River paths are an important east-west bike route but lack neighborhood connections. There's demand for north-south connections for bicyclists that currently do not exist, as bicyclists must travel on roadways alongside vehicles. The study will consider ways to create more direct and comfortable connections to these existing key facilities. The next element I want to highlight tonight is transit. Under the existing conditions, and in the future under the MBTA bus network redesign, Newton Corner serves and will serve as a local bus hub. The bus stop at Washington Street at Bacon Street is particularly busy with over 600 boardings and alightings every day. Private shuttles are available in the study area provided by local colleges, transportation management associations, and other organizations. Since Newton Corner is a large transfer bus hub with high ridership, transit priority treatment could be merited in the future, as could better multimodal connections to current bus services and to existing commuter rail stations, nearby Green Line stations, and other MBTA bus routes in nearby Watertown Square. Rail service is also provided in the regional study area beyond Newton Corner. The Worcester-Framingham line of the commuter rail runs parallel to I-90 with 4 stations in the regional study area: Auburndale, West Newton, in Newtonville, in Newton, and Boston Landing in Brighton. The 3 Newton stations are stair access only and are not currently accessible, although there is an ongoing MBTA project to improve accessibility at these stations. Connections to commuter rail and Green Line stations could be made easier with improved bus, pedestrian, and bicycle facilities. Now that I discussed the pedestrian, bicycle, and transit infrastructure, I'm going to talk about vehicular travel. We found that most vehicles using the Newton Corner interchange are local, with origins and destinations in Newton, East Watertown, and Brighton. Excuse me. While most traffic entering and exiting I-90 at Newton Corner are bound for destinations in the immediate area, there are some destinations that are beyond the neighborhood. There's a heavy reliance on the Newton Corner interchange, which must process a large volume of traffic. The study has also analyzed existing traffic operations. As I'm sure we all know, many roads are over capacity, notably the ramps to and from I-90. The road network can be confusing, with lane weaving and inadequate wayfinding. And the existing street network operates inefficiently with numerous conflict points and lane changes required. I also want to highlight safety, which is a key element. A review of recent crash data indicates that there are several intersection, pedestrian, and bicycle high crash locations within the study area, as identified by MassDOT. Emphasizing the desire to improve safety, several road safety audits have been conducted at locations in the study area, identifying safety issues and potential enhancements. All alternatives will consider long-term safety improvements to improve safety for everyone, including drivers and more vulnerable roadway users, including pedestrians and bicyclists. While the study will primarily be focused on transportation solutions, it is important to understand land use, demographic, and environmental data to get a full picture of the study area today. The study area is mainly residential, with commercial and mixed-use zones located in village centers and along major corridors. Further development is likely to occur in zoning overlay districts like the West Newton Village and Arsenal Street and Watertown districts. Office space in the area has increased by nearly 40% over the last 10 years. As the study progresses, we will develop alternatives that consider current and future land use, understanding that there will likely be further office development and moderate increase in density, and we will consider balancing and encouraging non-auto modes to manage traffic levels. Looking at population and employment, we see that Newton's population and employment densities are lower than in nearby Watertown, Cambridge, and Boston. Based on data from the US Census Bureau, about 1 in 5 people who live in Newton are youth, and another 1 in 5 are seniors. Approximately 1 in 4 identify as a minority, and 1 in 10 people identify as having a disability. It is important to note, though, that these statistics are reflected of census data where respondents identified as having a disability. We know, though, that there are many unseen disabilities, and this percentage may in fact be higher than 1 in 10. Overall, all of these populations generally tend to have a higher reliance on transit. In addition, the local study area is home to over 3,000 businesses and nearly 40,000 employees. Major employment hubs within the study area include Boston Landing in Brighton and the Arsenal Street corridor in Watertown. Of these 40,000 employees, only 5%, or about 1 in 20, live within the local study area. Understanding who lives and works in the study area is important when developing alternatives to consider the unique needs of those that travel through Newton Corner. Lastly, our review identified the presence of environmental justice communities, regional public health conditions, and environmental resources. When developing alternatives, we will consider how sustainable transportation solutions can have cross-cutting benefits and enhance quality of life. Thank you. I know that was a lot. I just wanted to remind everyone that these slides will be available online after the meeting. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Patrick.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you all for tuning into our review of existing conditions. This is an initial part of our study early work. And as we move forward, we're going to think more about future conditions and ideas about how to improve this area. But for the time being, I'm going to run through a quick summary of key takeaways from our review of existing conditions. Although this may sound repetitive, there are persistent and well-documented safety issues in Newton Corner. Newton Corner is a high crash location. There's a lot of crashes and safety incidents here. I-90 and the MBTA rail line cross through Newton Corner with the bridges that carry vehicle traffic. Even though there are sidewalks, it is an uncomfortable area to walk and bike in. Between Route 128 and Boston proper, there are limited highway exits, which means that Newton Corner has to process a significant amount of vehicle traffic. As we all know, it can get quite congested. Similarly, 60% of Newton residents commute using a car. It's through the data that we reviewed. Might fluctuate a little in reality. Approximately 94% of employees in the study area travel from outside communities. The highway ramps and local roads here process a large amount of regional and local traffic. Traffic is not the only thing at play here. There are natural, historic, and archaeological resources to consider. The Charles River is nearby, and Newton neighborhoods are known for their historic character. Something that also stands out is this area's vulnerability to climate change. Newton, Watertown, and Boston have all identified extreme heat and urban heat islands as critical issues for future planning. As we look ahead, it's critical to consider this and other themes as we think about improving quality of life and working together to make informed planning decisions for the future. I'd like to emphasize that traffic doesn't move in a vacuum, so to speak. We've previously heard feedback to not only think about traffic volumes and quantitative data. The study will also consider land use, public health, the environment, demographics, and other factors that influence planning and future development. And we'd like to next give you a quick overview of our study schedule and next steps. We've completed our study framework and are currently wrapping up our existing conditions work. We will include your feedback from tonight's first public meeting before moving into our future conditions work, which will run the rest of this fall. We'll then shift into alternatives development and hold the third working group meeting and the second public meeting. We hope to hold these sometime over the winter. In the spring, we'll hold our fourth working group meeting to present our alternatives analysis. We'll then move into our findings, which we'll present at a fifth working group meeting and a third public meeting. Once we review and assemble feedback on these, we'll move toward the draft and final report, which will wrap up the study and include recommendations for next steps after the study moving forward. And in terms of our next steps after tonight's meeting, tonight's presentation and Zoom recording will be posted on the study website soon. We have to review the transcript, so it can sometimes take us a little bit of time just to make sure everything's accurate. We'll incorporate your feedback from this meeting as we finish our existing conditions work and move into future conditions and analysis. We'll develop a summary of issues, opportunities, and constraints, which will inform our alternatives development after we complete future conditions as we move into the coming months. We hope to hold our third working group meeting and second public meeting sometime this winter. And it's now time for our public comment period. It is time for you to speak if you wish to. So we welcome you to share your feedback in a variety of ways. I'm just gonna run through these procedures as you put things in the question and answer box or raise your hand. You can click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen to be unmuted for verbal questions. You can dial *9 if you're joining by phone, and we'll call out the last 4 digits of your phone number to recognize you. As I said, you can also submit questions and comments in the question and answer box, Q&A, at the bottom of your screen by clicking on that button. We'll switch between written comments and questions and raised hands for verbal questions. Before your comment or question, we ask that you state your name and affiliation just to know who we have here with us tonight. We ask that you share 1 question or comment at a time, try and keep it under 2 minutes. This is a short meeting. We want to make sure everybody can speak if they'd like to. Can always share additional questions or comments after others have spoken. You can always raise your hand again. And we do just want to remind you that this meeting is being recorded and questions and comments are subject to disclosure for public records. When we open a public comment period at MassDOT, we like to acknowledge any elected officials who might be with us on the call and give you the chance to speak first if you'd like. So if there are any elected officials or people from their office who'd like to speak tonight, you can raise your hand or put yourself in the chat and we will acknowledge you. I do see a raised hand from Dana Hanson.
Hi, Patrick. It's Dana Hanson from Congressman Jake Auchincloss's office. Just wanted to thank the MassDOT team for holding this public meeting. And please know that our office is here to support this initiative in any way possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you to the Congressman. Seeing no other raised hands from that crew, I'm going to move into the public comment portion of this. First hand that I saw was from Robin Boger. I'm going to give you permission to unmute. You should be good to go if you'd like.
Good evening. Can you hear me, Patrick?
Yes, thank you, Robin. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you and everyone who spoke tonight for casting such a broad net over the social and economic and transportation issues that constitute life here in Newton Corner. However, I heard something tonight that really concerns me, and I want to highlight it for your consideration. To begin with a bit of history, the building of the Mass Pike in the 1960s replaced 2/3 of our village's retail space with a giant trench, over which was built what we reluctantly call the Circle of Death. Please notice that this village-oriented retail space has not been replaced. And when you talk about the economic situation here in Newton Corner, you're really talking about two marketplaces. One, the economic situation that benefits the businesses that depend on the Mass Pike. And this, I'm afraid, relates to your statement about office space, because the office space in Newton Corner is not used by residents in the village. The office space is a replacement for our retail space. And there's actually very, very little commercial space, retail space dedicated to meeting the needs of the people in the neighborhood. And I would ask you to please try to be a bit more precise when you talk about economic development in Newton Corner. Please consider that development that responds to the needs of the people who live here, and the development that is benefited from the presence of the Mass Pike and only exists because others can access our village, our neighborhood, to meet their own needs, which in no way relates to the needs of the people living here. There's not even a coffee shop we can go to on the south side to sit down and share a cup of coffee and talk with our friends. So that's just it might seem a small point, but for the people who live here, it's a very, very important point. Our village has no commercial retail space really dedicated to the village, except for a very small strip of stores. Please try to keep that in mind when you do your analysis, and think of ways that you can help bring village-oriented business back to Newton Corner. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. I appreciate all that. Newton Corner is definitely a key neighborhood in Newton, and we'll keep that in mind going forward. So thank you for your comment tonight. Christine, did you want to say something to that?
Yes, I just wanted to touch upon kind of the scope of the existing conditions analysis. And I fully appreciate your comment, Robin. And I do want to note that all of the land uses within the purview of the study area were assessed. It was not just office. That was just one bullet point that we highlighted. So we're trying to highlight a lot of information and analysis here in a very short period of time. So I don't want you to think that we've overlooked retail space as well.
Thank you, Christine. I see a lot of questions in the question and answer box, so I'm going to start running through those. First one we have is from Nate Gibson, who asks, will MassDOT share information such as traffic projections with the public? Nate, it sounds like you're referring to future conditions when we project out future traffic volumes. If that's not what you're getting at, you're welcome to clarify in the question and answer box. Future conditions is the next step of our process, so we'll present it at our next public meeting once we carry out our existing conditions work. So thank you for asking that question. So Parker asked, will your scope include potential land acquisition, including eminent domain? Not sure how specifically to speak to this. Christine, could you touch on this? Because I'm familiar with our scope, but out that we go into right of way is a little limited.
Yes, we do have, a brief analysis of existing rights of way, and easements as part of our existing scope. I don't know if this question is leaning towards potential future land acquisitions as part of the improvements. I think that may be where this question is leaning towards. And it's certainly when we get to an alternatives analysis, rights of way would be reviewed.
And we do consider any impacts that would possibly happen. Specific right-of-way, land acquisitions, etc., are addressed further later in the project development process. That would be after a planning study, and that's carried out by MassDOT's right-of-way department. Nancy Feltz in the Q&A box asks, are modifications to the West Newton exits to the Mass Pike being considered? Currently can only enter or exit in one direction. Also, are any entrances and exits being considered for Brighton? Thank you, Nancy. That is definitely targeted to our alternatives development. This is a long-term planning study, so we're looking at pretty much any and all solutions that could be put out here to address things beyond MassDOT's short and midterm work. So we're going to think about that possibility, not committing to anything, but we'll think about whether or not that makes sense with our review of existing traffic patterns where people are currently going and coming from, as well as moving into our future conditions where they're going to be going in the future with future developments and any changes in land use. So thank you for asking that. Suzanne Laughlin asks, has the DOT considered expanding the West Newton exits to include both on and off ramps in each direction? It would be great to take the pressure off Newton Corner to handle so much traffic. Thank you, Suzanne. Similar to the last question, it's part of alternatives, and we're going to consider what makes sense to do, if that's alterations to exits, on ramps, etc. D.D. Morton asks, what are the sources of funding? So this is currently not a funded project. This is a planning study to develop concepts for a future potential project. Later within the study process itself, we're going to come up with ideas for funding sources that can be included later on if this does move forward toward a project, but we don't have funding sources for this right now. This is the long-term work. So thank you, D.D. Morton. Similarly, Bill McBeath asks what kind of size of budget is expected that would impact how ambitious the solution can be, impacting the scope and ambition of proposed solutions, such as adding pedestrian overpasses or other major structural changes to the interchange. So thank you for that question, Bill. Basically, we're going to develop our alternatives first, and when we do the analysis of those alternatives, that's when we'll think about cost, constructability, and move toward recommended solutions, recommended things based on what makes sense from a budget, construction, funding, and variety of other analysis components. So thank you, Bill. I'm going to shift back to raised hands. Initially, the first one that I saw was from Dana from the Congressman's office. Welcome to unmute if you'd like to speak.
Oops, sorry, I forgot to put my hand down earlier. I'm good.
That's okay. Thank you, Dana. The next one that I saw was from Seth Parker. Seth, I have allowed you to unmute and you're welcome to speak.
Thank you. The response to my written question about will your scope permit land acquisition, including eminent domain, the response was a bit wishy-washy. I didn't quite understand whether that was a yes or a no.
So that would probably be because it's not a yes or no per se. Right of way is considered, well, okay. I have to think about how best to explain this, so thank you for your patience. In developing our alternatives for this long-term effort, we're going to think more about, okay, Christine, are you able to explain our alternatives a little bit better than I am? Because, it comes after we think about alternatives. So you might be able to speak to our alternatives development
Sure, I can
process.
try to step in here. So I think right now when we're talking about alternatives development, we're talking about the universe of projects. So probably anything is on the table. The consideration of rights of way and potential acquisitions or easements is something that will be considered as we go through alternatives analysis and trying to kind of score these alternatives of the best improvements to recommend moving forward. All that being said, this is a long-term planning study. This is not in design. So even any outcome out of this, it is still at a planning level and is not an indication that a property would 100% be taken. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. I hope that helped answer a little bit.
Thanks, Christine. And Seth, you're welcome to ask for further clarification if you'd like. The next raised hand that I saw was from Alina Duckham. Sorry if I'm not getting your last name quite right. You are welcome to speak and unmute if you'd like to.
Hi, my name is Alina Duckham. I live in Newton Corner, and I am an avid commuter into the city. And it's interesting the way you're saying, you know, that Newton Corner is a major hub, and it is. And I do notice, I take an express bus, and I do notice that a lot of cars are getting on the Pike, and they're only single drivers. And then on top of this, like the MBTA reduced the amount of buses that are coming into Newton Corner. And post-COVID, it seems like more people are driving in on their own. And then we've gotten reduced bus schedules. I just came back from a hard ride from the city. They've combined our bus schedule to, like if you want to go into the financial district, you have to stop by Copley and you have to traverse all the way through the theater district to get to the financial, which is impacting street traffic, which doesn't make any sense. A lot of the explanation was given that they didn't have enough bus drivers. Just, I guess what I'd like to understand is your study is a long-term study, and I understand that. But there are so many other little things that could be done in a short-term manner. And I guess I'm wondering who is helping us in terms of fixing some short-term fixes that could really improve things. Like who do we speak out to? You know, for example, this is just one. Another one is just better signage. You know, what we call the circle of death. You know, so many different things, the traffic light timing and so forth. I had heard that that was something new. But how do we get more of the short-term results if you're only focused right now on this long-term impact? Do you know the answer to that?
I have a few answers for you. Yes. So thank you for all that. I'm very sorry for your commute home tonight. I'm glad you did make it home. I work in MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning, we're the ones carrying out this long-term study. That's this meeting tonight. MassDOT's Highway Division, who is also under MassDOT, but separate from the Office of Transportation Planning. Highway Division is carrying out some immediate term construction work, which you probably see out there today, tonight, current weeks. They're doing some short-term work to adjust the ramps, and that work is going to continue into next year as well. This is sort of more medium terms, well, short-term, near-term stuff. Highway Division just finished a study of more short and near-term improvements that can be done, you know, part of which are getting done now, part of which they'll start to think about doing in future years. That's kind of, so some of it's getting done now, some of it's ongoing. To answer your question about who you can speak with about that, I am going to try and find a way to, there we go. There is a email address that you can email about those improvements just to voice your support for them, any questions that you have about that. That's for Highway Division's ongoing construction work.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you. You're welcome to email there. Christine, I think, or Nikki, we can move to the next slide to put up our contact information for this study as well, for everyone who's welcome.
Thank you.
I think you might have switched to mute, Patrick.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to shift to some question and answers in the Q&A box now. I see a question from Jeannie Fairley. What resources and methods were used to determine a very low percentage of people with disabilities in this study area? Thank you for your question, Jeannie. I know you also brought it up at the last working group meeting, and we on the study team have talked about it since then. We did review a variety of methods, and Christine looks like she can go into future detail on exactly how those were extrapolated.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for bringing that back up, Jeannie. So that statistic specifically came from US census data, I believe from the year 2022. I actually did, after your last comment, reach out to Valerie over at IHCD just to understand where the sources of her data may have come from. And it sounds like they have looked at a little bit more national data that comes from a few different sources, but cannot be broken down at that census block level, whereas the census data can, which is why we used it for this study area to really break apart certain parts of Newton. What we do fully acknowledge, though, is accessibility is important to everyone, especially our stakeholders. The U.S. Census data is relying on people identifying as having a disability, and we completely understand that there are many unseen disabilities as well. And that number may likely be much higher and closer to the national average, which is closer to about 20%, I believe. So regardless of what the number is and where the source came from, it's important and it's part of the goals and objectives of this study moving forward.
Thank you, Christine. I see another question in the Q&A box. I'm just going to take one more there, then shift back to verbal raised hands and keep going between there and the question and answer box. This is from Suzanne Laughlin. To bring back a community center, would it ever be possible to close in the area over the pike for a few blocks and use that for pedestrians to traverse the north and south sides of our community? There also might be room for additional green space and recreational areas. So that's sounds like a little bit of a question and also a comment. We can think about that during alternatives development. Part of one of our goals for the study is enhancing quality of life, which relates to recreational access. And we also have the one where we think about increasing pedestrian and bicycle connectivity. So that could be something that we consider during alternatives development. Thank you, Suzanne. I'm going to shift back to raised hands. I next saw one from Surgeon. Surgeon, you are welcome to unmute and talk if you'd like to.
Oh, hi there. Thank you again for having this public meeting. And I'm very glad to see the expanded goals of the project, which also include reconnecting the community and focusing in on some of the quality of life issues and not just simply focusing on traffic and how to get more cars through this area, safely or unsafely, but either way. And I hope that the alternatives analysis does include an alternative that includes reconnecting Center Street across the pike, and basically removing the need for people to go around in a circle to get from point A to point B. Most people would prefer to simply go straight. If they're going from Newton Center to Watertown, why merge them with people going eastbound from the pike, or people trying to get on the pike westbound? Why not let them cross over? And that includes bicycles, and that includes pedestrians, a nice expanded overpass connecting the two severed portions of Center Street. I hope that emerges as in at least one of the alternatives, maybe more than one. And then also just this idea that we have bidirectional flow on some of these streets that are now currently unidirectional, and that just simply stimulate aggressive driving behavior. If we have bidirectional flow on Washington Street for example, on the north side of the turnpike, once again, that allows people who are coming from Newtonville to go onto Galen Street by just simply going straight on a bidirectional Washington Street and then turning left on Center Street or Galen Street going into Watertown Square. And so I really do hope that the alternatives reflect some of those suggestions. One of the most problematic issues is the westbound on-ramp. That really does get in the way of any kind of planning effort. And so therefore, I hope that there is some consideration towards moving that westbound ramp somewhere else, maybe further west, maybe somewhere near Church Street. I know the railroad tracks kind of get in the way. They're very close to the pike there, but nonetheless, if we're looking at the whole universe of possibilities in the world, moving that ramp somewhere, or maybe even closing the ramp. I don't know. Why do we absolutely have to have a ramp? We don't in West Newton going westbound. Maybe we don't need one here, But either way, at least moving the ramp out of this congested area, I think would be very helpful. Anyway, thank you very much.
Surgeon, we appreciate those suggestions, and I'm sure we'll talk more during alternatives development when we'll be thinking more about those. So thank you for those. I next saw another raised hand from Robin. You're welcome to unmute if you'd like to speak, Robin.
I'm sorry, I must have forgotten to lower my hand. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you anyway. I saw a raised hand from Anthony Tucker, so I'm allowing you to unmute if you'd like to speak.
I didn't mean to raise my hand, sorry.
Oh, that is totally fine. Thank you. We'll do one more raised hand, and then shift back to the question and answers. I saw another one from Alina. Alina, did you want to ask a clarifying question?
No, I was all set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. We do have two more things in the question and answer box. One of them is from Seth Parker, who asks, who will fund the ultimate project? Is there a budget constraint? Seth, this is sort of all toward the end of the study process, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Ultimately, because this is partly a MassDOT area, I-90 runs through, MassDOT has jurisdiction over the Pike, and it's on and off ramps, and it's also local roads in Newton. Our study area also includes roads beyond that area, some of which are under DCR jurisdiction. So whatever roads essentially and other areas that are affected by a resulting project from this planning study, that would be a coordinated effort between MassDOT, the City of Newton, whatever other entities are involved in order to determine the funding together, and whoever's responsible for that. In terms of a budget constraint, we're not there yet. We don't have estimates or any concepts that we can speak to at that time for this. So thank you, Seth. Janet M asks, can one of the mods drop the link to these slides in the chat so we can review again? These slides are not currently online, but I will include a link to our website so that you have it. This is the long-term planning study website. We have a documents page on here where we will post slides and links to our recordings. Tonight's meeting is being recorded. It's going to take us anywhere from a few days to a week to get these online, just because we have to make sure that these are compliant and accessible to be viewed by anyone who might need help viewing them with viewing software. A little in the weeds, I'm sorry. And similarly with the recording, we have to review the transcript, but we're going to try and get them up as soon as possible. I don't see any more raised hands or anything in the question and answer box, so we're going to start to, this always happens. I see one more that came in from Anthony, so thank you, Anthony. Anthony Tucker says a new bridge for pedestrians and cyclists would help a lot with north-south connectivity. I hope that a pedestrian and bridge is considered in one or more alternatives. Thank you, Anthony. We'll think about that as we move forward. We did just want to put up this how to reach us slide before we close tonight. We do have a study website. I put it in the chat. I'm going to read it out loud, so thank you for bearing with me. It's mass.gov/Newton Corner long-term planning study. We have hyphens between those final words. We also have a virtual meeting room, which is linked here on this slide. Again, these will be posted online, and it is also linked on the study website there. You are also welcome to send us comments by email, planning@dot.state.ma.us. I check that every day. We'll try and help you out if we can. And that is all on here. So you're welcome to reach out. We thank all of you for being here tonight. Nikki, you can move forward to our closing slide saying thank you for all being here. And we're all set, so enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.